were talking to our neighbor's 6-year-old son about what he wanted to be when he grows up, and he said he wanted to be the president of the country someday. So we asked him, if you were to be the president, what's the first thing you would do? He replied, I'd give food and homes to all the homeless people. Ah, what an admirable goal, we told him. However, you don't have to wait until you are president to do that. You can come over to our house and mow the grass, pull weeds, and sweep our yard, and we'll pay you 50 euros. Then we'll take you over to the grocery store where the homeless guy hangs out, and you can give him the 50 euros to use toward food or a home. And so every day. He thought that over for a few seconds, because he's only 6. Then he asked, why doesn't the homeless guy come over and do the work, and you can then pay him directly the 50 euros? And we said, welcome to Virtuology. Virtuology is a means of empowerment for a breakthrough and transformation needed for your general well-being. It is about giving you a toolkit rather than provisions, about giving you the power rather than charity, a fishing rod instead of a fish. Virtuology promotes virtues as the key to success and happiness. It offers a new way of being in the world, a new frame of reference or a conceptual framework. Virtuology is not related to ethics or morality, as it doesn't concern itself with principles of right or wrong, or with the idea of moral superiority and duality. The level of our well-being, including our wealth, health, and relationships, is determined by the level of our consciousness, which is determined by how much we cultivate virtues during each day. By raising the level of our consciousness, we raise the level of our material and spiritual well-being. We raise the level of our consciousness by virtufying ourselves, that is, by cultivating highly potent virtues. For raising on consciousness, that is virtuification, there is virtuology. The premise of virtuology is that in order to be happy, successful, and prosperous, we need more than just knowledge and skills, we need virtues most of all. We can have the highest education possible, know everything there is to know, be talented, and take action all day long, but if you don't practice certain virtues, all that will be in vain. Knowledge, talent, skills, technologies, systems, action, and connections have no value and could be even counterproductive if they are not leveraged by virtues such as responsibility, accountability, love, optimism, perseverance, commitment, determination, adaptability, resilience, consistency, faith, credibility or trustworthiness, trustfulness, gratitude, authenticity, self-initiative, self-discipline, courage, patience, and others. The reason why most people who are highly educated, skilled, and gifted are not efficient enough or successful in achieving their goals, privately and professionally, is because their weaknesses have the advantage over their strengths. They allow their liabilities to gain the upper hand over their assets, choosing flaws and vices over their virtues. We are all subject to the law of polarity, having both positive and negative traits, virtues and flaws, and the ones who achieve lasting success in anything are those who have the advantage over own liabilities, such as prejudice, pessimism, skepticism, distrust, dishonesty, compromising, conformism, apathy, cowardice, irresolution, laziness, impatience, volatility, inconsistency, blame, criticizing, complaining, gossiping, delaying, stinginess, greed, vanity, arrogance, superficiality, fears, worries, phobias, and so on. As Napoleon Bonaparte said, "We govern men better by their vices than by their virtues." And so it is. Others are controlling and dominating you because of your flaws. So if you want to be free and in charge, hold on to your virtues. Another fundamental premise behind virtuology is that disease cannot exist in high vibration tissue. This is a fact now, with enough scientific evidence to back it. A sound mind in a sound body, and vice versa. This means that to heal or prevent a disease, all you need is to consistently cultivate some high vibe virtues, such as inner peace, serenity, joy, faith, compassion, love, gratitude, and others. The frequency of the healthy cells in the human body is above 61 Hz. When the cellular frequency is below that, ailments occur. Virtues raise our frequency and so generate high-frequency fields of energy in our cells that are vital for our health. What is virtuology? At the time of creating the virtuology program, the word virtuology was not to be found in any of the dictionaries. We coined this word to describe the science of virtues, not to confuse it with values, ethics, morality, or virtuosity. Virtuology is the science of virtues. It presents a branch of knowledge gained by systematic study through observation and experimentation. Virtuology is a social science of consciousness devoted to the study of the influence of virtues on happiness and success. Virtuology is the study of virtues and their functioning, a pragmatic, multidisciplinary study of virtues that provides a guide as well as a practical system and favorable conditions for activating and cultivating virtues needed for achieving any goals and general well-being. Virtuology is an empowering system facilitating the activation and cultivation of virtues by unifying and harmonizing the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual dimensions of being, and by raising consciousness with the aim of establishing complete and lasting welfare. Virtuology is the art of using virtues for one's own greatest good that is aligned with the good of all. Virtuology is also a strategy designed to empower you to achieve any goals through virtues. Virtuology is also our learning program and multimedia training for overall success with insightful modules on virtues and flows as well as on complementary skills. Virtuology is not a teaching in civics. Virtuology is not about being virtuous, if that word denotes only moral excellence. It is not about being kind and righteous, although these virtues are part of the whole virtues assortment. There is much more to virtuology than just a few virtues. Being moral, right, and a nice person is not what it takes to achieve goals. You may consider yourself a virtuous person, but if you don't water your garden, will it blossom? You need to do certain things if you want to flourish. Doing what it takes to achieve goals requires another set of virtues, which is part of the virtuology catalog. Health requires yet another suite of virtues, and so do the relationships, parenting, education, sports, business, and other aspects of life. We need different virtues for different goals. The purpose of virtuology is to release your full potential through activating your virtues and deactivating your flaws, and so empower you to achieve lasting success and happiness to live a meaningful and joyful life. Virtuology is here to support you in liberating yourself from much of the negative subconscious programming with virtues by providing the tools for raising your consciousness. Virtuology is there to assist you to be the best version of yourself so that you can have the best life. The more value you provide to others, the more you are valued and accordingly rewarded. You can create or add the greatest value to others if you live your fullest potential. By creating yourself the way you want, you automatically create your life the way you want as well. Well-being is our natural state of being. It has nothing to do with others or with external conditions, because we all have access to well-being at all times through our inborn virtues. Whether you are rich or poor, healthy or ill, single or in a relationship, you can bring yourself into the mode of joy, inner peace, love, compassion, or any other one that signifies well-being to you. You're just one idea away from enjoying prosperity. One idea, one solution that you can offer to the world and so be rewarded abundantly for it. This idea, this solution, this life path will be revealed to you when you raise your consciousness high enough using virtues. The Consciousness Theorem states the degree of one's well-being equals the degree of one's consciousness. The theorem of consciousness states that the level of our individual and collective well-being, of our success, prosperity, health and relationships is equal to the level of our consciousness. This depends on whether we listen mostly to our ego or our soul. Whenever you are reacting or making a decision, you are free to choose to either listen to your ego or your soul. When you follow your soul instead of your ego, when your soul is your guide, then you are on the path you need to be to live a joyful and meaningful life. To thrive, it is necessary to drop the ego-driven rigid ideas of virtue and vice and blur the lines between the opposites by learning to look at the life and world from a perspective of wholeness, unity, and inclusivity. A proper definition of a virtue is a complex one, thus we are going to cover it in a separate video. Virtues are essentially constructive modes of consciousness that combine the mental, emotional, and physical aspects of our being. So, when we talk about, for instance, love as a virtue, it is not meant as love in the sense of a mere emotion or just a state of mind, but as the love that expresses itself synchronously in thoughts, emotions, and deeds. There are too many virtues to mention them all here, but here are some in no particular order: love, compassion, gratitude, generosity, enthusiasm, optimism, joyousness, responsibility, perseverance, endurance, resilience, determination, self-confidence, faith, credibility or trustworthiness, trustfulness, reliability, authenticity, flexibility, resourcefulness, enterprisingness, self-initiative, self-discipline, courage, patience, integrity, honesty, honor, wisdom, creativity, imaginativeness, curiosity, open-mindedness, diligence, humbleness, modesty, inner peace, and others. Virtuology is all about virtues. It asserts virtues as means to success and happiness. Virtues determine success, but not any virtues. For each particular goal, specific virtues are required. Virtuology provides insights on how to activate and use virtues effectively, respective to context. Knowledge, talent, and skills are useless without certain virtues. Virtues empower them. Virtues are the X factor which gives power and effectiveness to knowledge, talent, and skills. The gap between knowledge and benefits thereof can be closed by virtues. Virtuology is designed to do just that, to close that gap, to blur the line between them. Ethics versus virtuology. Virtues are part of some other studies too, such as ethics and morality, but quite different from virtuology. Ethics is all about values. It is a system of moral principles or values, as well as a branch of philosophy dealing with values relating to human conduct with respect to the rightness or wrongness of certain actions and to the goodness and badness of the motives and ends of such actions. Morality is a system or collection of ideas of right and wrong conduct, as well as the quality of being in accord with standards of right or good conduct. Virtuology doesn't concern itself with principles of right or wrong, which are relative, but more with the practical implementation of individual virtues, as well as with personal liberation from the destructive forces of vices and flaws, with a goal in mind: achieving long-lasting happiness, success, prosperity, and well-being. The idea of moral superiority has been the source of many immoral, inhuman acts, including killing those perceived as morally inferior. Most people who believe their virtues are hard to live with, as they are often perceived as strict, rigorous, rigid, harsh, authoritarian, annoying, or boring, and probably rightfully so. They are also too harsh on themselves, as they spend most of their lives trying to avoid and fight what they consider wrong, improper, immoral, or sinful, which usually means that this is constantly on their mind. Resisting and fighting something all the time is not freedom from it. It is very tiresome to live like that and no fun. Apart from wreaking inner havoc and taking pleasure in assuming superiority, let's not ignore that in many cases they are more prone to criticism, accusations, blame, public shaming, threats, intimidation, insults, antagonism, and haughtiness than to virtues of compassion, altruism, tolerance, love, and kindness, which is not virtues after all. Since nobody, not even the royals, priests, and gurus, can fully live by the morals prescribed by their religions and societal norms, most people live in a state of perpetual guilt, shame, fear, and misery. These feelings of guilt, inadequacy, unworthiness, low self-esteem, and such make for a crippled existence with tragic consequences. Such morality leads to cancel culture, exclusion, and division. Virtuology, on the other hand, advocates inclusion and unison, with a rehabilitating rather than punishing approach toward transgressors. It takes virtues out of the box thinking that reduces the virtue's quality to just being moral. In a broad sense, virtues are qualities that don't concern themselves with morality at all. It might be very moral to cultivate them, but this is not what they are about. This is not to say that morality is wrong. It is not without its uses. As a matter of fact, morality brings some social order and stability to our lives, especially when the essential nature of our humanity has been suppressed and distorted, and when oppressed people act out. But like with everything, it matters how morality is applied. However, if every human being would know their true nature, there would be no need for morality at all. This is the mission of Virtuology, to get the best out of humans, to bring the essential human nature to light, to kindle the humanity in everyone, to advance the profound understanding of the human mechanism, to raise everyone's consciousness, to virtuify the world a bit more. The premise is simple. You have a good seed, and when you cultivate it, it will blossom. Cultivating your essence is your only responsibility. With co-creating a value, it is what your life is all about, your life's mission. You do not have to do anything else. You do not have to change the world, not even one single person. As long as you do that, you do not need any lessons on morality or any metaphysical discourses. When your humanity is sparked, your virtues activated and cultivated, you are naturally changing the world by shining your light. Like a lighthouse that doesn't need to move or do anything to help others find their way. The science of virtues is the science of raising consciousness to the modes of virtues in order to be in complete harmony and sync with all of existence, and so achieving lasting, profound well-being. You actually can neither raise consciousness nor can you lower it. The expression of raising consciousness usually denotes raising awareness, which you can raise indeed. In Virtuology, we use that expression to denote raising the level of consciousness or raising own frequency. The variety of modes of consciousness classify under two main categories: positive and negative, or constructive and destructive, in other words, virtues and flows. Rising to a more potent mode of consciousness enables a much greater perception and prudence needed for best decision-making and problem-solving. Only when your consciousness rises above a certain mode can you perceive reality with clarity and in its purity. All decisions should be made and problems resolved when you are in a mode of a virtue, rather than in a mode of a flow. When you raise your consciousness and fine-tune yourself to the point where everything runs well within you, naturally the best of your abilities will shine out of you and you will reap brilliant rewards. In accordance with the Hermetic law of correspondence, as within so without, that is, with the correlation of the microcosm and the macrocosm, you have surely noticed that when you are well on the inside, you always perform better on the outside, and you need much less food, sleep, or anything else, plus you are free of pain, stress, and problems. The uninterrupted flow of energy empowers and liberates you to be all you can be and to live your way. Elevated consciousness naturally elevates the results. Virtuology acts like a switch, switching the light in you so that as an enlightened person you can shine in whatever you do and be a beacon to others. The premise of the science of virtues is that the quality of our outer lives corresponds to the quality of our inner life. In other words, your life mirrors your spirit. Your outlook determines the outer looks. Your outside world is only a reflection of your inside world. You project everything. Nothing is real unless you make it real. So, for your life to become better, you need to become better. Therefore, virtues are the way. The reason why we never suggest resisting or abstaining from vices, flows, faults, and such is that this is a surefire way to achieve the reverse. As you know, if we told you not to think now about a monkey, you would hardly succeed at that. In psychology, it is known as reactance, which stands for a reaction when experiencing a threat to or loss of free behaviors when someone or something is taking away our choices or limiting the range of alternatives. As the saying goes, forbidden fruit is the sweetest, which is why drugs and vices have a greater appeal and allure than their counterparts. Temptations are hard to resist, but it has more to do with the fact that it is in human nature to demonstrate some sort of rebellious attitude towards any limitations or boundaries because we want to be free. Anything that authorities or the majority condemn has the effect of upping the cool factor amongst a minority. Another reason is the law of resistance, which regulates that what you resist persists. Therefore, our focus is rather on cultivating virtues than on liberating oneself from the flows. It is futile and unnecessary to try to exterminate flows from human nature. They are there for a reason. Without the negative, there will be no positive features. They are like two sides of the same coin, in a way, but not quite. We are not suggesting to embrace flows, as people are already overdoing it. Virtuology is about taking advantage of our virtues, harnessing the power of virtues as the means of success, which doesn't apply avoiding the flaws and vices, but intelligently choosing that which is constructive in the long run, rather than destructive. Virtuology doesn't advocate the positive thinking concept, which seemed to have turned into a tranquilizer of sorts and one of the go-to measures to sugarcoat reality whenever people are unable to process their ongoing predicament and control their psychological drama. Positive thinking falls under duality thinking, that virtuology also doesn't support for the reasons that are explained in the video on the law of polarity. Initially, positive thinking might seem to imbue your life with confidence and optimism, but it is essentially limited and crooked. In the long term, if you deny or cut off one part of reality, it gives you a skewed perspective of life. Though it makes somewhat sense that many psychologists tout it as a sort of psychological magic potion which might be effective for them and all the other highly conscious individuals. However, the problem with this is that not all people have the same understanding, and as most people are not highly conscious, they simply assume that positive thinking implies seeing the world through rose-tinted glasses while ignoring or denying the negative aspects of life. Such an approach is counterproductive and harmful because by avoiding or ignoring the negative things, we are not able to learn from them or solve them. Approaching life's challenges with a positive outlook or from a positive point of view involves making the most of the seemingly negative situations, learning lessons from them, seeing not only the worst in fools, adversaries, and criminals, but also their positive qualities, as well as perceiving ourselves and our potentials in a positive light. Unfortunately, this is not what people do when they think positive. So, rather than advocating this popular but mostly misleading concept, instead we propose activating and cultivating related virtues depending on the context, such as optimism, enthusiasm, constructiveness, thoughtfulness, equanimity, neutrality, flexibility, tolerance, patience, gratitude, unconditional joy, inner peace, sense of humor, and others, but most importantly, we explain the law of polarity and non-duality in order to rise above the concept of positive versus negative altogether, whereby the conflict between good and evil becomes redundant and differentiating virtues and flaws needless. Likewise, virtuology is also not a proponent of the conventional stress management, anger management, crisis management, or any other kinds of negativity management that involve dealing with something that should not be managed but rather prevented or converted. Why manage something that should be replaced by virtues, right? Why manage the dark area when you can just switch on the light? Flaws are only there where there are no virtues. Turn on the virtues and flaws are gone. So, rather than giving too much attention to flaws by managing them, the virtuology approach is to offer you a constructive alternative, the virtuification, as well as the tools to protect yourself from their effects. Like using an umbrella when it rains instead of managing the rain, like using a lamp in the dark rather than managing the darkness. Neither is virtuology in the business of exporting human well-being to the heavens and afterlife, or claiming that all we need is love, or that we should love our enemies. The reason why virtuology doesn't advise to love our enemies is not that such thing is impossible for 99% of people and therefore futile, but because there is something much better and easier: to make no enemies in the first place, and to perceive no one as an enemy, but rather as a teacher of sorts, like Dalai Lama, who said that Mao Zedong was one of his greatest teachers, even though he invaded his homeland Tibet and forced him into exile. Of course, virtuology shows the way. Also, Virtuology doesn't advise anyone to follow their instincts, as many great teachers do, because this is advisable only to those whose consciousness is high enough. For instance, most people have many fears, so they instinctively fear new things, which is not constructive. Likewise, people prone to criticism have the instinct to criticize too much, to focus on the negative rather than the positive side. Also, skeptics are instinctively suspicious and distrustful, even in instances when it will be natural to be trusting. Therefore, suggesting to the general public to follow their instincts is not wise at all, although it's surely wise to do so among those whose consciousness is predominantly in the positive domain, as it is in some advanced societies and communities. As a matter of fact, Virtuology is not there to teach anything, but to empower you to transform yourself by throwing light on the power and benefits of your inborn virtues and equipping you with the tools for transformation so that you can attain the ultimate freedom, peace, and well-being. There is nothing to learn because true human intelligence doesn't come from intellect, teachings, books, and such. Virtuology has no teaching to convey, no doctrine to install, no philosophy to impart, no morals to preach, no secrets to reveal, no belief to propagate, and no cause to articulate. It offers no instructions to follow, no techniques to implement, and no drill to exercise. It is not about doing something, but about being something or everything. Instead of techniques, Virtuology provides a toolkit as well as practical examples and calls for action as a chance for you as a reader to put the ideas into action. A true master needs no servants, no followers, no disciples, and no students, let alone believers, worshippers, or supporters. This applies to Virtuologists too, of course. It is because to be true, it means to acknowledge that there is no separation, that there is no one lesser or greater, and that all roles are interchangeable and hierarchies fictitious. A true, realist master is beyond dualisms, divisions, separations, and such, as well as beyond ego play, personality cult, and leadership schemes. Anything that serves, pleases, or promotes an ego is not worthy of a true master, who should see a master or God in everyone and everything and everywhere. A true master knows the traps of his ego and ranks, and therefore doesn't fall into them. As soon as we amass fans and underlings, their sure rivals and enemies will emerge too, for this is the way nature keeps the balance, which falls under the law of polarity. In the today's celebrity culture and the world full of posers, show-offs, influencers, gurus, know-it-alls, big mouths, braggers, exhibitionists, extroverts, self-proclaimed experts, superstars, icons, idols, imposed leaders, and similar peacock personalities, showcasing their personal lives and accolades to keep a low profile might come across as somewhat weak or worthless, but only to the superficial observer. It must be said that a true master is also not mysterious or mystical, because there is nothing to hide and no need to hide or seclude oneself as such. Virtuology is building a culture of virtue rather than a personality cult. There is no need for a leader here or anywhere else for that matter, because no one should be a follower. Everyone should be a leader of oneself by taking full responsibility. By realizing one's true nature, it becomes obvious that there is no need to follow anybody, since each and every one of us has inborn qualities to lead a great life. These qualities are our innate virtues. We just need to be activated and then cultivated. Virtues determine success, but not any virtues. For each particular goal, specific virtues are required. Virtuology provides insights on how to activate and use virtues effectively, respective to context. In the long term, knowledge, talent, and skills are useless without certain virtues. Virtues empower them. Virtues are that which gives power to knowledge, talent, and skills. They are the X factor. The gap between knowledge and benefits thereof can be closed by virtues. Virtuology is designed to do just that, to close that gap. The significance and the value of virtues have been recognized since antiquity. However, but for some reason to this day, this fact hasn't been taken seriously enough for the establishment to build a whole system on virtues instead of just on knowledge and technology. Many prominent figures have been addressing this issue for ages, but too little has been done for virtues to take a prime role in any aspect of life, such as education, economy, work, health, relationships, entertainment, and so on. Just to name a few, here's what some luminaries who have graced this planet had to say about virtues. Plato. All the gold which is under or upon the earth is not enough to give in exchange for virtue. Buddha. To walk safely through the maze of human life, one needs the light of wisdom and the guidance of virtue. Confucius. The superior man thinks always of virtue, the common man thinks of comfort. Aristotle. Happiness depends on the cultivation of virtue. Ludwig van Beethoven. Recommend virtue to your children, that alone can make them happy, not gold. Thomas Aquinas. Happiness is secured through virtue. Marcus Tullius Cicero. Glory follows virtue as if it were its shadow. On the other hand, here's what some celebs have to say about the value of virtue in modern society. Kirk Douglas. Virtue is not photogenic. What is to be a nice guy? To be nothing, that's what. A big fat zero with a smile for everybody. Marilyn Monroe. In Hollywood, a girl's virtue is much less important than her hairdo. José Marti. It is necessary to make virtue fashionable. Gary Bauer. Guided by nothing but pop culture values, many children no longer learn how to think about morality and virtue or to think of them at all. They grow up with no shared moral framework, believing that the highest values are diversity, tolerance, and non-judgmentalism. Many other prominent people warn about virtues being undervalued nowadays, so it is important to fix that problem. Virtuology is our way to make virtues fashionable, and certainly not for the sake of being in vogue, but because, as our illustrious predecessors, we know from experience that virtues hold more value than gold in terms of achieving happiness and success at anything.